What's up, everybody? It's your boy Cedric with Actual Christianity, and this is going to be my first video in which I actually talk about gaming. But today I want to talk about Elden Ring. For those of you who are watching this, who know about Elden Ring, you know about Elden Ring. So this video is just basically for y'all. The Elden Ring's DLC is challenging. That is the truth. Elden Ring is challenging. FromSoft games have always been challenging. But I think there's a problem with people whining and complaining about the difficulty for Shadow of the Erdtree. A lot of people are saying that it's just too difficult. Here's really the issue. The game really isn't too difficult. It's simply not too difficult, especially relative to the base game itself. There are a number of bosses in the base game that are very, very difficult to beat. Everybody knows full well when we first started playing Elden Ring, these bosses seemed impossible or just overly difficult. But over time, they became less difficult. And there's basically two big reasons for that. Number one, leveling. You can always level and level and level and level and level and level in Elden Ring, and that therefore would mean that the bosses would get easier and easier and easier. And so by virtue of just exploring the world, getting items, finding out a build that works for you, and just leveling your character, bosses got easier over time. That's just the truth. The same applies with Shadow of the Erdtree. You're getting the Scadu fragments and leveling yourself up as a result in that world, making it easier for you, right? The second issue is really the bigger issue. I've seen a number of streamers, enormous popular streamers, okay? It drives me crazy. But there's a number of streamers who play Elden Ring who don't read anything on the screen. They'll pick up some of the most important items in the game and they'll just press the button and keep moving on. And then they get confused, wondering what's happening or what they picked up. They'll be like, oh man, what is, I got nothing from that. And then they just freaking picked up like the Bloodhound Fang or something like that. There's so many times when people play the game and just don't read anything. Like there's so many items, so many craftable items. There's so many things you can utilize to make your fights easier, but time and time again, people just press the button and move on. Like, I'm gonna be straight up. I think the overwhelming majority of people whining about the difficulty for Shadow of the Erdtree are people who simply don't utilize items that they use or that they pick up. They just don't. Like, there are so many livers in the game that reduce certain elemental effects. There's so many different kinds of meats that can be crafted to build up your damage, to increase your robustness, to prevent you from having blood build up as quickly as it otherwise would. Like, there's stuff that you can find. There's talismans that increase your immunity so you don't get rot or poison as quickly as you otherwise would. And so I just have to say, like, there's so many people that I think have leveled up their characters so much that they've gotten used to stomping everything in the standard game to where they come into Shadow of the Erdtree, they expect to stomp the enemies there because they've had these builds that carried them forever, Bloodhound Fang, and then they get to Shadow of the Erdtree and they just get stomped because they're not used to getting beat down again and having to take advantage of new items or stuff they had before. Like, I've seen people pick up cookbooks, or actually not even pick them up. I've seen people go to a vendor, they find the vendor with that skinny little donkey every single time in different parts of the world. I've seen some of the most popular streamers will go to the vendor, they'll see what he has to sell. This dude got like 3 cookbooks to buy, and they just don't buy them at all. They say, oh, cookbook, that's dumb, and then they just move on. Like, man, imagine thinking that you don't need these items because you simply looked at them, what they said, and not what they can actually do, and you moved on. And then later, people get upset, like, man, this fire does so much damage. I don't understand. This is ridiculous. It's like, dude, you can use fire damage resistance. There's like, what, 4 talismans in the game that reduce that? And then there's another talisman that just reduces any non-physical damage. And so I really don't think Shadow of the Erdtree is as difficult as people say it is. To be clear, there are a number of enemies that just constantly keep spamming attacks, and then you have to get your hit in when they're done doing their freaking ridiculous combos. That's kind of an issue with Elden Ring in general, but in comparison to the base game, it's not that different. They might attack more often, or they might do something that you're not expecting, but nevertheless, The biggest problem with a lot of players for FromSoft games is their lack of patience. They're just not reading. They're not reading, and they're not waiting for the moment to attack. I think there's definitely some criticisms to be made about boss design that doesn't allow you to get more than 2 or 3 hits in, right? There's definitely something to be said there. But to make it seem like this is just some completely different game in which people are just struggling against the seemingly impossible, that's just not true. I mean, dude, there's Mimic Tier. Mimic Tier can make all the difference in the world. Like, it really can. Your builds can make all the difference in the world. Using items, having the appropriate talismans on, that can make all the difference in the world. But the truth is, FromSoft knows that a lot of people don't read stuff, and that's kind of their own undoing as a gamer. It's like picking up stuff and not reading it, or not thinking about how you can best utilize new stuff. So that's really the issue. Like, I say this as a person who's beaten the Impaler, beaten the Divine Beast. I've made really good progress in the game. But it really is about patience when it comes to FromSoft games. Just utilize the items you have, because there's tons of items. Just explore, find stuff, and level up. And use the stuff you find.